Hi, today I'm going to show you how to paint a series of skies. So I've got a large A3 piece of mixed media paper, so you can put watercolour or acrylic or anything else you want onto it. And I'm going to do 4 separate skies. And the first one I'm going to do is just going to be a slightly graduated colour sky. So I'm just going to use this opaque cyan, primary cyan acrylic, studio quality. It's quite good. And you can use a palette, but I'm just going to squeeze it straight onto the paper. And I'm going to use some white as well. Same brand, just some white acrylic. And I'm going to take a large round brush and very little water. I'm just literally going to wet the brush, that's all, because this is quite liquid. It's very new paint. And I'm just going to start to spread. And first of all, I'm going to get the paint onto the paper like this. Okay, I've started with the darkest colour, which is the blue. And I'm just spreading it out. Now it's quite warm in here, so I do have to work quite quickly. And I'm now going into the white. Okay, and I'm making sure that the white just goes down the bottom area. Okay, now you can see that we're left with 2 stripes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of most of the paint off the brush at the bottom like this, and I'm going to work backwards and forwards right over the masking tape. I've put masking tape around the outside so that you can see a border, okay, later on. So you can see I've got rid of most of the paint. So the brush is quite dry. And I'm going to work this across, up to the top. And you can see it's drying out. So I need to work really quickly. Backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And this is just to smooth out. Do not add water at this stage. Smooth out. You can see how quickly I've done that. Any slower than that, and it won't work. You won't get that even because it'll just dry out on you. You can see it's coming up a little bit there. Okay, so you've got to work quickly. The only other alternative is to put water on your brush, and you really don't want to do that because it will just turn into a very transparent result. So you can see I've got quite a smooth graduated sky, lighter at the bottom, closer to the horizon, darker in the foreground. Brush is quite dry. Wash your brush off straight away and dry it off on a rag. Your brushes must be really, really dry to use them to get these very smooth results. So you won't be able to see the full result until I take the paper off, but I'm going to leave that one where it is. And the next one I'm going to produce is going to have some colour in it. So I've got some sort of yellow ochre colour here. I've got a big pot because I used it for a big painting. I don't know if you can see that there. Okay, so it's yellow ochre. And I'm going to use, again, I'm going to use a blue, but I'm going to use a different blue this time. And this is going to be for a slightly what can I say? How can I describe it? If you put blue and yellow into your sky, you get a sort of slightly warmer result. But you've got to be very careful because it's yellow. You've got to be careful that it doesn't go green because you're mixing 2 colours together that would make green if you mix them together properly. So again, I've got this darker blue, putting quite a lot on this time, and I'm going to put that at the top again. This is a bit more transparent, so you will see the paper through it a bit. I'm going to wash my brush off, and then I'm going to add the yellow. And you can do this with any yellow, but obviously you'll get different results with different shades or tones of yellow. But this is like a sort of yellow ochre raw sienna colour, and raw sienna is used a lot in skies. So again, I'm applying it to the bottom, I'm working it up. Now I'm hardly going to touch the blue and the yellow together because it will go green. So I'm smoothing this out first. Smooth, 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 smooth. And then I'm going to wash my brush off completely, dry it off, wash it in really clean water, dry it off again so it's completely dry with a rag. Oops, I just spilled that on that top one. Anyway, oop, I've just realised you can't see what I'm doing. Right, so here we go again. I'll move that up so you can actually see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. Okay, so like I said, I applied the blue, the dark blue, and I've got the yellow ochre or raw sienna. I've pushed the paint up to the middle, but I haven't mixed the two together yet. So I'm going in now with a dry brush. I've dried it off on a rag. And I'm going to go back in and I'm going to smooth out the upper blue section. This is a darker tone than the one I used above. And I'm going to push that down. Now, what you have to do now is you do a stroke and then you take off the blue. So you wash it off your brush and you dry it off again. Oops, not like that. Let me just sort that out. Okay. So, right. Dry off your brush but not directly over your work. And then again, go back in and just single stroke across. Dry off your brush, wash it off, dry it off, using your rag, single stroke across. And each time you're just doing one stroke. Repeat the exercise until it looks smooth enough for you. Oops. So I'm just going to now push that back up into the blue. Can you see like that? And then just keep going like this. Okay. So there you have it. There's your mixed graduated sky from blue to raw sienna or yellow ochre. Okay, now what do we do with a dramatic sky? So what we want is a dark blue and maybe some black or some grey, whatever you've got to hand. So I'm going to put this cyan colour on, and I'm going to push it up again because I know that I am off the shot. So let me just move my materials around. There we go, and I can push it up. There we go. It's just such a huge piece of paper. So I've got my cyan. You can use cerulean or cobalt, something like that if you want to. And first of all, dry, clean, almost dry brush again, and spread that cyan out. And then we're going to put in, I'm going to bring it down to about here with this one. You can put it anywhere you like. And again, just sort of start to spread it out. Now, again, you've got to work really quick before it dries off. Remember, this is a dry brush technique. So dry, almost dry brush. You can have it with the rest of the paint on this time. And then we're just going to pat this in. So pat it in patches like that. And then what you need to do is take a completely once you've sort of smoothed out the lumps, you want to take another brush, the one that is completely dry and completely clean of colour, and you want to just carefully just smooth the edges like this. Smooth the edges first, and then you need to do that again. Start cleaning off your brush. So with this you need lots and lots of rags. All right, and clean. In fact, if you've got a bunch of brushes that you don't mind having to wash, then that's the best thing to do, really, is to just use almost a brush until it's filled back up again. Can you see that's almost filled back up again? And then put it away. Pick up a clean brush, clean dry brush, and go back in again, and just backwards and forwards. And you're just removing that sort of upper layer of paint. Can you see how I'm doing this? I'm going back in, and then once it starts filling up again, another brush. I've got a whole bunch of brushes here, and you just have to sort of put up with the fact that you have to wash them all. Backwards and forwards. Again, takes practice. You can push it up and just smooth out those darks and lights. Again, once it starts filling it up, put it away, pick up another one. But again, like I said, it's good if you have them in your hand so that you can work with them immediately, because you can see again that this is really starting to dry off, and as soon as it dries off you can't work it anymore, and you can't put any water on it, because the water is your enemy. The water is the bit that will prevent you from being able to smooth this to your required consistency. Okay, so there's a bit of a dramatic sky with a bit of black added into it. Now, what about a sunset of sorts? Let's have a bit of red and a bit of yellow, like that. Okay, so clean brushes again. I'm just going to wet this ever so slightly again. Let me just move my camera so you can see. There we go. Okay, into your paint, left and right, off the page. Oops. This camera stand is so close to the paper that I keep, because these brushes are really long, you know, these acrylic brushes, and I keep colliding with it. So down into the yellow, and this time I'm going to pick up yellow and I'm going to put it up into the red, so we create an orange like that. You can take that up as far as you want, and you can add more yellow if you want to, and then into the yellow at the bottom, and again just backwards and forwards. You can leave little traces like this. This is quite nice. So if you want to leave it alone, then just don't go over it with your brush. Like that. Just make sure it's blended in though. Backwards and forwards, until you smooth out your paint. Now, so like I said, lots of rags, lots of brushes, lots of water, just to clean your brushes off with, not to mix with your paints. Work really, really quickly and practice. It takes a lot of skill and effort to get the speed right, especially if it's warm in your studio or where you're working, to get that smoothness of paint, to get the thickness right, to get the blending right, it takes a lot of practice. So don't worry if you're not getting it right to begin with. Just use cheap paper and canvas. You know, you can even use old paintings or whatever. I'm just trying to zoom out on this, but I don't think I can get it all in at once. Anyway, there's two of them. And just have a go, keep practicing. If you get frustrated, stop and have another practice another time. Maybe do one or two. You can always use these pieces of practice as collage in the future, or you can do individual paintings on each one. I'm going to show you how to do clouds next, but I need to wait for these to dry off. Okay. Okay, so here we are back at the top, on the top sky, and I'm going to use a little bit of white. I've dried them off so they're thoroughly dry, and I'm just going to use a little bit of white on, and again I'm just going to put it straight on to the paper. Okay, just a blob. I can rest on this now because it's dry, and I'm just going to move that around now. I'm just going to put in some clouds. Now, if you've never painted clouds before, go and have a look online at cloud formations. There's loads and loads of information everywhere about cloud formations, and just get used to how clouds look. It's really important that you don't draw them like clouds off The Simpsons. Okay, so here we go. Let's have some clouds. Again, you need to work really quickly and you need to have your paint ready. So I've got some white, and I'm just going to add in a little bit of this. It's like a brown colour. Now, you might not have this brown, but just mix up some red, yellow and blue and you end up with a brown. I'm just going to put it underneath. This white's quite strong. I'm just going to put it underneath the bottom part of some of these clouds. Can you see how I'm just putting it underneath? We're just going to create a shadow of the cloud, and we're just going to again pick up another brush. Let's see. A big round brush again, and I'm just going to dry brush it in again. So I'm just going to smooth the marks in. So smooth those browns and those whites together like that. Okay, same again. If it starts getting a bit dry, just don't add any water. Pick up some paint. This is really drying out very quickly. And really, I should have had that brush ready. But if it starts to dry out on you, add paint. Don't add water. The water is the devil when it comes to doing this dry brush mark. Okay, I'm going to need a little bit more white. Going to pick up some more off the top of the tube. Yep, like this. I'm just going to extend these clouds out. So can you see how I'm just, again, patting in that colour together, getting those clouds to move around. A bit more white was needed. Okay, just in the tops like that. And it doesn't matter if you can see the blue through. Just going to take a little bit of brown, just add it in. And remember that the brown is the shadow of your cloud. Okay, there we go. Okay. Like I said, rather than adding, rather than adding water, add paint. I'm just going to put some white back in on the tops. Again, just patting in those shapes. Again, look at the various images online for cloud formations. Really go in and get those clouds lovely and full of shape, but just make sure that you put that shadow on the underside. Have your paint ready to add in. You can even go up and into the cloud just to create some shadows going up and into the cloud like that. But as long as the surface is wet, you shouldn't run into any trouble, and as long as you remember not to add water. Okay, there we go. I'm going to leave that for the moment. I'm going to work on to the next cloud. So this one is going to be slightly smaller, and we're going to run it across. Now again, we're going to use a little bit of yellow here because we're going to work onto the second one. Let me just twitch the camera around. There we go. Okay, so here we go. And I'm just going to put some long thin lines here like this. Okay, there we go. I'm going to add the yellow in just long and thin. Get the paint on first. There we go. And then we're going to add the brush marks. So again, take a brush, a dry brush, and just work those in side to side like that. Okay, you can even take some of the paint off and just rub them in to the background, and these will create clouds, and I'm going to do a slightly bigger one in the foreground. Okay, so the foreground is always the top of the sky, and I'm adding that yellow in again. Okay, I'm just going to wipe that brush off, wash it off should I say, dry it off with a rag so I can smooth that one in. That's a bit wet. Again, these are difficult, so don't get frustrated. These are like these sort of very thin graduated clouds that you get going off into the distance. So I'm just using a very dry brush here, and this technique you can use for water, for waves as well. Okay, next one a bit more dramatic. Let's go with, oh, let me just change the angle again. I'm hoping that I don't run out of battery. Oh, there we go. Here we go. That's it. So with this one, I'm going to take a big brush and I'm going to put some really dark, oops, clouds in. Let me see, what have I got? I'm looking for more brushes because I've used all my brushes up in the water, but I'm just going to have to clean one off, I think. And into a rag again to get it dry. Okay, so here we go. So this time I'm going to use that pot. I had a pot of blue somewhere. Which has disappeared. You just see, oh, there it is. I have a lot of pots full of paint from previous works, and they tend to get mixed up because I don't label them. Okay, so in with some nice big marks. So rather than put white into this, we're going to put some, I'm going to go in with that brown again, because that brown was really quite nice. And I'm just going to put it underneath again. And you can see as it mixes, it'll just darken up that blue. Again, I'm just using a very dry brush and bringing that cloud into the distance. So this is what clouds in a night sky would look like. You wouldn't get too much difference in tone. Again, I'm just going to take some of that brown. I'm going to put another one down here. And they would be very dark and dramatic. So on top of that dark sky, you would get a very lovely result. Okay, I'm going to take a touch of black, just a touch. I'm just going to put the black almost straight onto my brush without it spurting everywhere, hopefully. And go into just underneath the clouds again and just leave it quite sort of bitty really. If you've got any hairs, just sort of pick them off with your, again, just pat it in and leave this one quite sort of bitty really. Okay, that's rather nice. I'm going to leave that as it is. Wash your brush off. Last but not least, we're going to go for this sunset. Now, so with the sunset, all you need to do, I'm going to just move this camera again. See if I can get it as straight as possible. The angle of it is not quite right, so I might have to move the picture itself. Ah, there we go, that's not too bad. Okay, so we're going to use the actual colours that we've used on the sky. So we're going to use oranges. So I'm going in with a slightly smaller brush here. Just putting in a couple of lines of paint. There we go. And then I'm going to use a little bit of red. Again, I'm not using a palette. I tend to do this mainly because it does save on cleaning. You're not washing colours down the sink. But again, it takes practice and confidence. So if you're not, if you're new to painting, then this can be quite challenging. So use a palette. Maybe you could use a Stay Wet palette that doesn't mean that you have to throw so much paint down the sink. Okay, again, just a dry brush just to soften those marks in. You could put some different sort of textures by using the excess that's on the brush, just by rubbing your brush backwards and forwards, and you can drag those marks across your sky like that. Can you see how I'm doing that into those lumpy bits? Spread them out if you need to, like that. And try and be brave and know when to stop with those. Okay, so I'm just going to let those dry off. I'm going to clean up a bit. I'm going to remove the masking tape and then you can see how they look. Okay, so there we have it. 4 very different skies. I'm just going to run this through because I can't get it all on my screen of my camera as a whole sheet. So I'm just going to run this through very slowly. So there we have our sunset. I've just removed the masking. I have got the dramatic sky. You can see where I've slightly torn where the masking tape was, and that was because I didn't use a hairdryer when I was taking it off. So when you use masking tape, when you're removing it, just take a hairdryer and hold it close to where you're removing the tape, and that melts the glue a little bit on the tape and it pulls off much more evenly and you won't get tears like this. I'm not that bothered because these are just test pieces, but you know, if they weren't, I'd be annoyed. So that's my dramatic dark night sky, and we've got the sunset sky, and then we've got this sort of, I don't know what those clouds are called, but they've, you know, they're sort of thin and wispy. I wish I'd blended these a little bit more. These sort of lines that are running along the top here, I should have had them a bit more like this. So I just ran out of time and to sort of blend them into the background. So your only option here would be to put some paint, some colour back in, so the yellow or the blue over the top, and then again just blend over the top using the same technique. And then we've got the white clouds here. Ooh, can you see that? Yeah, you can. Okay, and again the white clouds are quite good, but I probably could have done with putting a little bit more paint on. They're a little bit transparent in places, even though it's quite nice to see through them every now and again. You know, anyway, have a look at some pictures. They will help you enormously. Use the variety of colours. Really, the main thing to think about is when you're using yellow and blue together, try not to mix it so it mixes a green colour. Okay. It's very difficult. Like I said, it's similar to when you're painting water as well. You have the same issues, but the more you practice, the better you'll get. Okay, and you can do things like, let's see now, if I take some black, you know, there's no reason why you can't go in. I'm just going to use black here just for ease. And you can just put in some distant hills. So you can create a landscape out of each. And if I'd have done this before I took the masking tape off, then I could have kept that lovely even edge. So you can just put in some hills going off into the distance. Same on this side, and create a very simple, calm landscape. I'm just using a small brush for this, and this is just one example. You could do trees, you could do little buildings, you know, there's endless subject matter for objects against the sky. And you know, before you know it, you've got a lovely little landscape there to play with, or to send off to a friend, or you know, you could make it into a card. Okay, there you go. It's quite nice actually. Maybe a couple of birds. I could just put a couple of birds in. You know, this is what's great about creating little swatches like this almost, is because each individual piece will inspire you in some way to paint a particular scene, you know, just by the atmosphere that you've created in this painting. There we go. Okay, so look at each individual sky and think, well, what's going on there? You know, at the bottom of this dramatic dark sky, maybe you could have some boats sailing off into the distance or something. Paint some sea and then have a couple of little boats or something like that. Okay, have fun with them and send some in. Let me see your ideas and your finished works. Hope you enjoy it. Breathe while you're doing it. Don't get frustrated and don't add water. Okay, bye for now. See you next time.